Hi, I'm Zola Levitt. On today's program, we're going to Jerusalem, and we're going to talk with the mayor of that busy city, Ehud Olmert.
There is something about Jerusalem which does not exist in any other place in the whole world.
Shalom. Hello again. Well, this is the last program of our This is Israel series. I hope you have enjoyed it. We're going to the heart of the matter on this program, Jerusalem. 3,000 years ago, King David made it the capital of Israel. It was the Jewish capital. No other people has ever claimed it as its capital, certainly not the Muslims, occupying crusaders, Mamelukes from Egypt, etc. Turks marched through there. No one ever called it the capital. It is the Jewish capital, and that's all there is to that. On the map, of course, it's in the center of the country right here. The West Bank, so-called, was cut in this way so that the Jews from their side have access to Jerusalem. Imagine doling out to people access to their own capital. This name West Bank was perfected by the late king of Jordan in order to make it seem small. It's, as you can see, half the arable land of Israel. But he did fool at least MTV when they had Arafat on their program. In the intro, they said the West Bank, and they showed a picture of a riverbank, about 50 yards. That's more than that. You know, Jesus Christ will return to this city and will reign here. All Christians will reside here, including you. If you're a believer, you will reside in Jerusalem 1,000 years, unless you're in the foreign service in the kingdom to come. Jerusalem is truly a place for a king and a place for a queen. You know, we who are the bride of Christ will be the queen of the kingdom to come. That's something we never think about. But, you know, Revelation 19:7 and 8 says, blessed is he who comes to the marriage supper of the Lamb, and the wife of Christ hath made herself ready. And now to Jerusalem. Well, in the heart of Jerusalem are two buildings, each unique for different purposes, that are most beautiful. Behind me, the magnificent YMCA, certainly the finest YMCA in the world, and across the street, the King David Hotel, one of the world's great hotels. The YMCA was started here in the 19th century by the very British man who invented the idea of a Young Men's Christian Association. And in Jerusalem, it was more than a Christian association. It's a place of peace for all religions, is the idea. And the building architecture says that. There are 12 cypress trees in front of the building, and they represent the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 disciples of Jesus, and the 12 followers of Mohammed. We're obviously on a busy street. Jerusalem goes on and on around us, and you'll hear traffic and so forth. Between these two buildings is a very, very busy thoroughfare. Also, there are 40 pillars exactly in the facade of the building, and they represent Christ's 40 days of temptation and the 40 years wandering in the desert. Either end of the building is like a mosque on either side, representing the Muslim preferences, and the central tower is rather like the pillars of the Ten Commandments, has two windows in it that look that way. And Christian, Muslim, and Jewish symbols throughout the building, and the place is dedicated to everybody putting their differences aside, coming together, playing sports, fellowshipping together, and they do that. There's tennis here and handball, gym equipment, like any YMCA. There's rooms for the night. There's a couple of nice restaurants. And there's even a Messianic congregation that meets here on the outer porch on Sundays. Our tour group has attended services with that congregation. And the place goes on in one of the busiest and some say most contentious places in the Middle East, always a scene of peace. Well, we're at the little cafe where lunch is served, the porch of the YMCA, in the heart of Jerusalem, which, you know, was a Jewish city to begin with 1,000 years before Christ, when King David captured the city from the Jebusites. That was in 2 Samuel 5. It tells from verse 6 to 10. And then later, of course, Muslims came, Christians came, and so forth. And the city became the heart of three religions. There are three sections in this building that express the Muslim, Christian, and Jewish sectors of the city. There's three sections of the city: the old city, the original; the new city, which basically Jewish people have built since 1948; and East Jerusalem, which has been generally occupied by Arab people for a long time. And so their three religions live together, more or less. Of course, it's always under discussion. 90% of the tourists who visit Israel certainly visit Jerusalem, and of those, 70% are not Jewish. They are Christian tourists or tourists from the Orient or Europe or whatever, not Jewish people. I should say, when I discuss the three sections of Jerusalem, that the new city, the one built since 1948, by the Jewish people, is 20 times bigger than the old city. It really is Jerusalem. East Jerusalem's quite small too. It would be like comparing Manhattan with the other boroughs of New York. It's really the main part of the place. But as we say, Jesus walked in the city streets in the old city. It was always a place of religion, a place of politics, then and now, even going back to David's time. This was a center of discussion of all the people who lived in the area. Of course, Israel itself is a crossroads of the Middle East, and this is always going to happen here. Jerusalem, of course, is the capital now officially of Israel, and it was recaptured by the Jewish people in the '67 war, in the Six-Day War, and in 1980 officially made the capital again, as it was in the time of King David 3,000 years before. After all, the Knesset is here. The Congress, the parliament of the country, is in Jerusalem, not in Tel Aviv. We, America, are among those nations that prefer Tel Aviv so as not to upset the Arab people, but the Knesset is in Jerusalem. It's so funny. I mean, our embassies are over in Tel Aviv. You always have to drive these 45 miles or so to visit the Knesset and back and forth because we stubbornly refuse to acknowledge this capital. You know, when Chaim Weizmann spoke to David Balfour originally, the English were trying to impress the Jews to go to some other country to establish their homeland. Uganda was suggested, of all places, in Africa and so on. And finally, Weizmann, who was the first president of Israel, said to David Balfour of the English Parliament, "Jerusalem was our capital when London was a marsh." That is quite true. In fact, Jerusalem was the Jewish capital when Rome and Greece were not even thought of yet. In the time of King David, there were no other European capitals, none, at the time that Jerusalem was the Jewish capital. Well, the debate over the capital rages on, and Scripture covers it. In Zechariah 12, God says this, "Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about, when they shall be in the siege both against Judah and against Jerusalem. And in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it." We're seeming to come to that time rather rapidly. This is just the nature of this place. In 1 Kings 3, we hear the original commendation of God on this city, where it's God is talking to King Solomon, who has built the temple, and he says, "Of the Lord said unto him, I have heard thy prayer and thy supplication that thou hast made before me. I have hallowed this house which thou hast built to put my name there forever, and mine eyes and mine heart shall be there perpetually." It's pretty strong. God chose this place as his capital also. And Jerusalem now is, in a sense, preparing to receive her king. The end times are here, many teachers say, and I certainly agree with it. And Zechariah 8 says, "Thus saith the Lord, I am returned unto Zion. This is almost as if he's talking, you know, I established myself here back in David's time, and now I've come back along with my people. He says, I am returned unto Zion and will dwell in the midst of Jerusalem, and Jerusalem shall be called a city of truth, and the mountain of the Lord of hosts, the holy mountain. About time. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, there shall yet old men and old women dwell in the streets of Jerusalem, and every man with his staff in his hand for very age, and the streets of the city shall be full of boys and girls playing in the streets thereof. Old people, young people, the whole society will be peaceful and receptive of the Lord when the king returns. This really is a place for the king. It's not like the high places established by the pagans all through the ages, but rather in the midst of the city, the temple of the king will stand, and people all over the world will come to this city. Zechariah 14:16 is heartening. It says, all those nations which went up against Jerusalem shall come up from year to year to worship the Lord of hosts and to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles. Sukkot, or Tabernacles, is a stunning, wonderful, beautiful festival of Thanksgiving, roughly equivalent to an American Thanksgiving, and also happens in the fall and usually in October. And that will be a festival we will all attend in the kingdom to come, wherever we're living. If we're married to the king, presumably we're living here. But if you're living even in a foreign country, you'll come here at least once each year to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles. You know, an 18th century Polish rabbi's daughter wrote this on her wedding invitation. She says, the wedding will take place next Tuesday in the holy city of Jerusalem. And this is way before the Jews were in Jerusalem. Then she writes, if, however, God forbid, the Messiah has not arrived by then the wedding will be held in the village square. She was so trusting of the Lord that she wrote it just that way.
Come with Zola Levitt and see for yourself the land of the covenant.
You know, Zola puts on one of the most spectacular trips you could ever be on. The whole group, everybody just puts everything together. It's spectacular.
With what was chosen for us to do, as well as who guided us, who spoke with us, the other people on the trip, it was wonderful.
Other people said they went on cruises and trips like this, and it was all historical, and they saw a lot of sights, but this was spiritual, and this was really good. So I'm really glad I picked Zola Levitt's group to tour the Holy Land.
Tour the Holy Land with Zola Levitt. Call or write for more information.
Well, see Israel for yourself. That's the thing to do. Don't depend on us to show it to you. I'm glad you're watching, but I think you ought to take a tour there in this life. I really recommend. With us or with someone else, just fine. Now, Jerusalem, well, it's mentioned in the Bible over and over 1,000 times, I don't know. Do you know that it's not mentioned in the Quran at all, the holy book of the Muslims? Jerusalem is not holy to the Muslims. Jerusalem is not holy to the Muslims. It's a political idea. People of the mentality of Arafat and the king of Saudi Arabia and people of that nature decided it'll be, but it isn't mentioned in the Quran. The best argument they have is that Muhammad dreamed that he rode his horse from a far mosque or sanctuary to heaven. And they decided to say, well, that'll be Jerusalem. They picked it out. They could have picked New York City or Washington. I'll argue that point with any Muslim from the Quran. That's not a problem. You know, people get this place so mixed up. A recent columnist, Tony Blankley, said in the Washington Times, Jerusalem's a place where Moses and Muhammad and Jesus all walked there. No, sir. Only Jesus of those three walked there. Muhammad never visited, and Moses didn't either. Jerusalem is precious to Jews and Christians. It is not precious to Muslims, but they pretended it is. The Jews and the Christians, though, have a real stake in this place. I talked with the busiest mayor in the world, Yehud Olmert, the mayor of Jerusalem. Mayor Olmert, in America and the Western world, the news about Jerusalem tends to be very negative. Dusty streets, people pushing each other, worse than that. And yet when we come here, it looks like a peaceful, very beautiful city.
It certainly is a very beautiful city and a very peaceful city. You know, everything is relative. The problem of Jerusalem is because of its very unique status, its enormous significance for world history, for so many different believers, so many different religions across the world. There is an enormous sensitivity about Jerusalem, which is different from perhaps any other city in the whole world. Therefore, every tiny little event, which will be hardly mentioned or even noticed in bigger cities in different parts of the world, immediately becomes a global event when it takes place in Jerusalem. Everything that takes place here is immediately a global event. So things tend to blow out of their real proportions. But there are more violent events in every major city in America or in Europe. There are more insecurities in terms of personal safety and security for individuals in most major cities in the world than there are in Jerusalem. Jerusalem is cleaner, is nicer, is certainly more beautiful, and more inspiring than any other city. Okay, you go to New York, and I love New York, and you see these high rises and big towers. Okay, after you have seen 5, you got the idea.
That's right.
You know, and so in many other places.
5,000.
And you go to Miami, and you go to Tel Aviv, and you ask yourself, which is Miami and which is Tel Aviv? And which is, some other of these cities. There is something about Jerusalem which does not exist in any other place in the whole world. When you think that just across from where we sit now, 500 meters, in 1 square kilometer, we have more holy sites that are important and significant for more believers of more religions across the world than in any other place in the whole world. When you think of all the most fundamental events of our civilizations which took place in this small place, when you know that when you come there, you can look at places of which you read in the Bible. Now, this is not fiction. This is not a fairy tale. This is a reality. You walk through the hills where King David walked. This is not a story. We have the remains of the house of King David just outside of the wall in Jerusalem. You look at Absalom Memorial, which you read about in the Bible, that King David built for his son after his son tried to assassinate him.
Yes.
And he eulogized him in one of the most beautiful pieces of poetry that were ever written by any human being in human history. All this is here. It can't be compared to anything. So it is true that Jerusalem is filled with all kinds of difficulties and problems and contradictions, which is part of the fascination of this city. But how can it be compared to any other place?
Yeah. Part of your job is keeping an eye across town. We have been to the Orient House, and we interviewed Faisal Husseini, who is, claims to be a Palestinian Authority representative for Jerusalem, and for all intents and purposes puts himself out as a mayor of East Jerusalem. That must be a thorn in your side. What goes on with the other side of town?
This is a virtual status. It's not real. It's not of any practical significance. Faisal Husseini has no authority to take any decision regarding the life of people in Jerusalem or their whereabouts or their well-being. He can't build one school, he can't open one school, he can't give one permit, he can't give one license, he can't impose a certain restriction. It's more like a political rhetoric. As far as political rhetoric is concerned, he's a great expert. But that's more or less what it is now. You know, one thing I can do is to try and engage myself in almost endless battles, verbal battles with Faisal Husseini of what is his real status. I find it totally unnecessary because I am not interested in wasting my energies on rhetoric. Everyone knows that the only person that holds the real power in terms of running the city, in terms of taking the decisions, in terms of really affecting the quality of life of people, regardless of where they are, but as long as they are in Jerusalem, is the mayor of Jerusalem, is myself, is not Faisal Husseini.
We interviewed David Barlan, who pointed out that during the Cold War, the Russians tended to come to America and televise, and it wasn't that they told lies, it's just that what they put on the television was people standing in line for food handouts were negative things, and by showing nothing but negative things, gave the place a bad name.
Gave America a bad name in Russia.
Yeah, exactly right. The Russians saw nothing but these pictures, and I'm beginning to think the same thing happens to Jerusalem.
Russians waiting in the lines in Russia to buy bread in a store were shown pictures about Americans doing the same, but I think they didn't believe themselves, and they knew the realities. Yes. And I think that this is true about the perceptions of, regarding Jerusalem. Jerusalem is a city of great fascination, and also I think a city where tolerance is really a major ingredient in the life. There are very good relations amongst the different populations in Jerusalem. But there is a desire by lots of political factions to portray Jerusalem in a different way. This is not true.
And to look to the past, Mayor Teddy Kollek, who we also interviewed, was in office, what, some 20 years?
Yeah, over 20 years.
Over 20 years. Do you anticipate, well, you anticipate being prime minister someday, but you'll stay in leadership position?
Not that long as mayor. I think it's wrong to be so many years mayor, and this is my observation also about the last few terms of Teddy Kollek, who just stretched these terms a little bit too much. I think, although he was a great mayor, he was a great mayor. Yeah. But I think you can't keep the same kind of efficiency and the same kind of enthusiasm about what you do in such a long time. There is always a danger that you will fall into a certain routine, which, by the way, is not bad when you run Miami or when you run Detroit or when you run St. Louis or Tel Aviv or Haifa, but not when you run Jerusalem.
That's a pretty special.
You must maintain within yourself this enthusiasm, this excitement that is going on all the time, because without it, what is left for you to do in a city like Jerusalem? And you can't do it 25 years, you know. It can be done 10 years, 12 years, 14 years. I think that's enough.
Well, at this last program of our series, This is Israel, I hope that we accomplish what we set out to do. What the networks, etc., just will not do, and that is show you Israel as it really is. They show you Israel as a war-torn place, dusty villages, cops and kids and so forth. That's just silly. It hardly occurs at all. And we have shown you what's really going on there. The media is in business to report problems, all the way from your local TV news and your hometown paper all the way out to the giant networks. That's all they do is cynicism, negativism, and in some cases it's bad. It really is bad. As I said before, if Israel were a person, it would long ago have sued for libel and won the case. It's terrible the way they describe it. We believers must support Israel. We must support the home of the kingdom to come. For heaven's sake, that could start tonight. We have to give it some support if we're going to live there for 1,000 years. If I'm reading the Bible correctly, that's where we're going. They asked Jesus, wilt thou at this time restore the kingdom of heaven unto Israel? Well, we're going there, and we're going to live there and be the queen of the kingdom to come, and we must be at least interested in it and to support the Jewish people. Can't we at least love who God loves? He picked them out. Okay, you may think he has bad taste. That's up to you. But can you do what God does and love them a little bit? At least stop criticizing or get after those that do? Jesus Christ is going to return to the land he left. Jesus Christ never left Israel, other than as a baby when his parents took him to Egypt. But he witnessed in Israel to Jews only. And we ought to do what he does. Do you witness to Jews? If not, give us some support. We'll get them for you. We'll go out there. We go all the time. Paul says you have credit if you support a ministry with what that ministry accomplishes. So he's coming back to Mount of Olives. Are you ready to go with him? If you are saved, if you believe in Jesus Christ, you will go to Jerusalem for that 1,000 years with him to the Mount of Olives. Take the CNN Cure. Get our 12 programs. They're all on videotape, very convenient to use. You can see all the things we've told you, and I hope you will. And get our Levitt letter and our catalog. Those are free. Just send us your name and address. And Sha'alu Shalom Yerushalayim. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Thank you.